First of all, thank you everybody for the invitation. It's an honor to be in front of such an illustrious group. I'm probably the least well qualified of all of you in engineering terms. I do know my way around technology, as my background alludes. There has been a golden thread running through my career, which is technology and the deployment of technology into various business scenarios to help support those businesses, to help manage change in those businesses, and to open up new opportunities. And that's very much where Celestial lives, in that space. I will switch screens in a moment and just talk to you briefly about what my agenda is this evening. But first of all, I just wanted to talk to you about the overall kind of underpinning ethics of Celestial as a business. We feel very strongly in the mantra, drones for good. And we try to use that tagline whenever we're posting across all of our social media. We feel that the word drone has been tarnished somewhat from one end of the spectrum, with the kind of casual and annoying user throwing up their drone at a beach when we're all trying to get a little bit of peace and quiet, through to the other end of the spectrum, which is kind of the horrific, sometimes horrific deployment of military drones into those countries overseas. We feel that there's a lot of rehabilitation to do. We hope we're doing that to some extent. And we're taking both direct and indirect measures to make that a reality. Most directly in terms of those measures is, we are carbon neutral. We're a viable alternative to fireworks. And we think that we can kind of help change people's minds about whether or not throwing fireworks into the air and all of the associated heavy metals and carbon deposits that result from that is a good idea in the current climate, literally the current climate. But beyond that, we are setting up a not-for-profit division called Human Support, and I will talk to you about that in greater detail further in the presentation. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to open up my screen so that you can see the opening slide of my presentation, or at least I hope you can. Just 1 second. So yeah, we are Celestial Laboratories. You can see us at celestial.show if you have a web browser. And of course, if any of you want to get in touch with us, you're very welcome to do so at any time after this meeting. What I'm going to do now is just walk you through the agenda. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the origins of the business. I'm going to then show you a video, which is Promo 1. It's known as internally. It's the first film we made to help explain what we do to those future clients, to investors, and to some of the regulatory authorities, for example. So Promo 1 helps underline that. Then I'll talk to you a little bit about the founding team, why we managed and how we managed to get this business together so quickly. And we had a huge appetite from both investors and clients ever since we formally founded the company in January of last year, before I joined formally again in March of last year. A picture's worth 1,000 words, so I'm going to go on to a second video, which is a short, all of these videos are short, by the way, a short 1.5 minute featurette, which explains what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. I'm going to talk to you then about the events business and how we interface with that events business and the various verticals within the events business that we can help service. Then another short video, a few minutes long, which is a highlights video of 3 films that we put together for our launch event in December of last year. And that was for Hogmanay celebrations in Scotland. We made 3 films, films of the drone displays that we ran in different locations around Scotland in a very COVID-friendly and responsible way, I hasten to add. And we had an enormous amount of success from those films. I'll talk to you a little bit about the process, how we design and liaise with our clients on those designs, create storyboards, scripts. It's very similar to a filmmaking process, in fact. And then I will talk to you a short while about what happens beyond events. We have aspirations to move into a software business, and I'll explain a little bit more about why that's the case when I get to that section of the presentation. Then, as I alluded to right at the beginning, and the ethical underpinnings of the business, I'll talk to you about human support and why those ethics can be made real with imaginative deployment of drones into atypical situations. So situations that go well beyond events, pure events and entertainment. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about where we are with international rollout. So first of all, I'm going to let you know a little bit about my co-founders. As you've heard, my background is in the music industry, the lighting industry, events, then the music industry, and then new technology strategy. That new technology strategy, which I garnered my expertise in whilst European Vice President at Sony Music, gave me a lot of insight as to how to run a business, how to grow large teams, how to roll out internationally, but it also gave me insight as to what investors might be interested in and how I could start up businesses and importantly scale up businesses so that they could be meaningful and purposeful enterprises, and I could pull the right people into those teams to support those businesses as they go forward. I was very lucky when being introduced to Celestial. There were two very talented co-founders who had been gestating this idea for quite a long time, a couple of years before my arrival. They'd had their attention drawn to them by a drone swarm show for the Korean Winter Olympics a few years ago. And they immediately thought, wow, this is a great idea. What can we do? And what can we do to differentiate ourselves in this very, very early market? One of my co-founders, John Hopkins, is a veteran filmmaker. He's been in that industry for 20 years. And that's how come the films we make are of such high quality. We're very lucky to have him. And he also doubles up as our creative director. So he's the person that helps clients realize their ideas, turn them into designs, scripts, and then shows. My other co-founder is Nick Kowalski. And Nick cut his teeth in the events business, but then went on, because he's an electronics engineer by trade, went on to understand fundamentally how drones work and started building drones for a third-party company, which then had some military applications that he wasn't too happy about supporting. I have to hasten to add, it wasn't anything in the offensive or kind of munitions world. It was more to do with transportation of troops, heavy lift drones, and a secret ride-on hover bike, which he helped develop and roll out to various clients. So between us, the three founders, there's a massive intersection of skills that are all relevant to what we do now. And I'll talk to you about some of the other team members as we move forward. Right now, what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I would like to just show you this short opening video, promo one. And this goes to show how we try to, if you like, differentiate ourselves from that original Korean animation that my co-founders saw those years ago. And this is what got all of our investors so excited. So I'm momentarily going to stop sharing screen before I open up a video screen. So bear with me just for a second, if you don't mind. Okay, so you should now all be able to see this video screen, and I will run this for a minute or so, and then I will be back with you directly. There you go. Hopefully that came across okay for everybody. So the key point of differentiation there is that we felt excited about the prospect of incorporating human performance into drone show displays. Hitherto, and actually internationally even now, and I think the Tokyo Olympics is testament to that, most of our competitors around the world are still doing what we call logo wear, and that is logo 1, swap to logo 2, swap to logo 3. It's quite static, and even with 1,000 or 2,000 drones, that can be a little bit tired for the audience who are watching below. We wanted to go beyond that because we not only saw a market opportunity, but we thought that having direct control of the drones for not just a performer, but for an audience watching via maybe their smartphones or via light-up wristbands that they may be wearing at a concert, and for entertainers themselves, so lead singers, percussionists in bands, DJs, and now we're coining a phrase, drone mixers. All of those people will be able to interact with the drones in real time and make it an integral part of their performance. Not only that, we're going to be able to capture a performance and, if you like, create a three-dimensional sculpture. So we're now engaging with Sotheby's and we're talking to them about modern contemporary artists who may want to use this as a palette, as a new medium, for the first time being able to create a 3D sculpture that can be recorded and then either rolled out to a touring international museum circuit or actually be bought by an individual, much in the same way that Damien Hirst's Shark in Formaldehyde needed a whole bunch of, technicians to look after that piece. We would also be able to have a service contract where if someone owned this piece of art, we would be able to allow them to display it as and when appropriate for their guests or for other buyers, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole world of opportunity that, that having live control of a swarm instead of just pre-programmed control of a swarm gives us. And we think that's really, really exciting. I'm just going to share another screen with you now, which is just so that I can walk through who our team members are and why those team members are important to us. So if we can just, can I open up this browser? Just 1 second. Okay, great. So you can see the three beautiful faces of the co-founders just here. But we also have a role for a senior producer, much in the same way that any producer would, oh, excuse me, sorry about that. Much in the same way that any producer would produce a film, we have a line producer that works through each one of the elements of the show for our clients. We have a lead technical artist who is he's a professor of animation at Dundee University. We have a chief technology officer, of course, who looks after all of the hardware and software development that we need within the company itself. And if this scrolls through here, we have a head of innovation. You know, it's really important for us to keep on innovating, and everything from working with fluid dynamics to influence the animations we create, through to distributed mesh networks that allow us to communicate with the drones at higher bandwidth and greater resilience as the swarms get bigger. Of course, we have a production coordinator within our office, and we have someone driving our new business as we move forward. And then we wouldn't be able to do anything without, of course, a finance person looking after all of our interests. Over and above that, when we are deploying into the field, when we are creating an event, we need a huge ground team. So it's not uncommon for us to have 40 or 50 people on the ground. And if you think about a few hundred drones and how complex that is to lay a few hundred drones out onto a grid precisely, to set up those radio networks, to have pilots and redundancy on all of the levels of technology, we we need a very substantial crew. So this isn't an inexpensive operation. And our entry level, just to kind of contextualize that for you, our entry level for a show is around £150,000. Our typical fees that we might kind of generate from a show are around £250,000. And there's really no upward limit. You know, as we go into hundreds or even thousands of drones, then we would expect our clients to be able to fund those in the most appropriate way. But we do think there is real value there, because as you can tell just from that short clip, we're all about storytelling, narrative, and emotional engagement. We're also about distributing effective messaging. And while we set ourselves against fireworks in some ways, there's no way that fireworks can kind of stay in the air and deliver that message and kind of give continuity of brand and so on and so forth in the same way that we can when we're using drones. And that's a really important thing to remember. The other thing, of course, is that we have that film crew in-house. So we have camera drones that we fly around when we're making movies of the displays that we fly. We also have ground cameras, and we have some amazing post-production capabilities so that we film, we edit, and then we do all of our own post-production, giving our clients a legacy product. And that means it's not the ephemeral display that you might see with fireworks or even with drone shows. They've got a lasting document of what they've just invested in, and they can use that material as marketing collateral to help them promote their own brand and to help them disseminate their brand messaging across social media channels and traditional channels. I'm going to now move on to video number 2, which is our featurette, and I'll be back with you soon thereafter. So bear with me.
Celestial is the world's first drone display company that incorporates organic movement.
If you look at the murmurations of a flock of starlings, all of those beautiful organic patterns, that's the kind of look and feel we want to have with Celestial. We want to tell stories, and we want our technology, if you like, to be self-generating in terms of the patterns it creates.
These drones talk to each other using quite sophisticated AI, so they're able to operate independently and work as a unit to create these amazing images in the night sky.
What we're really passionate about at Celestial is keeping this high-tech technology green.
We want to supersede fireworks. Our sustainable technology allows us to tell stories in a brand new way and on a truly epic scale.
By using this new artistic medium to create messages of hope, we aim to reignite mankind's relationship with the stars. Celestial is a collective of creative entrepreneurs, and we want to push the boundaries of what's possible with drone display technology.
We live in a time where people are constantly looking downwards towards their phones, and what we want to do is inspire them to look up again by propagating a shared sense of wonder.
Celestial, welcome to Sky Theatre.
So yeah, there's our first kind of featurette that explains to all of the people we engage with exactly what we're doing. We have since dropped the name Sky Theatre as one of our products because we got advised by our legal team that Sky wouldn't be happy about us using the word Sky. So we've dropped that, and we're trying desperately to come up with an alternative. We haven't come up with anything yet. However, you know, I think it goes to show what it is we're trying to achieve. And then we can start talking about, you know, where does this go? What do we do? Who do we do this for? So initially, of course, we are servicing an events industry around the world. But with COVID, and we launched, by the way, you know, in March of last year, as we all remember, the start of COVID, complete nightmare. We tried to launch an events business just as all events stopped. So we then were able, thank goodness, to pivot and start making those films. And we started to propagate ourselves as a COVID-friendly solution to events, in as much as, you know, you can have a lot of social distancing for thousands of people because these drones can be seen from many miles away. Optimally, you know, between 500 and 1,000 meters. but we've had reports from friends and dog walkers from seeing our drones from 5.5 miles away. So that's pretty remarkable. Because we could create these films, we were able to not rely heavily on events business, thank goodness. And the team and our overall capabilities grew as a result because we had to work harder. And that now means we've got a bigger skill set that we can bring to our clients. So indirectly, that has done us a huge favor. And notwithstanding the tragedy of COVID overall, I think we may be in better shape because of it. So, it's been tragic for many, many companies, but we did have an upside out of that tragedy. And for that, we're really grateful. In terms of the kind of business we support on the events side, as and when everything starts to open up again, I think a good example of that is something we are on schedule to do in March of next year, which is the Adelaide Fringe Festival. And the Adelaide Fringe Festival is what it says on the tin. It's an arts festival. It's the second largest arts festival in the world. But we are going to be introduced to some First Nation creatives that are spoken word musicians, dance cooperatives, and visual artists. And with all of those artistic collaborators, we're going to be pulling together a show that completely enshrines all of those amazing Indigenous creative outputs into one show that will be feature length and will be premiered at the Adelaide Fringe. Of course, once we've done that, we're going to have the capability to tour with that show. So we're starting to engage with large museums around the world, like, for example, the Guggenheim in Los Angeles, because we think that this is a great story to tell. It's a great dissemination of that kind of primitive art, which doesn't get much of an airing around the world. And we think we can kind of facilitate cultural exchange, and that feeds back into our ethical position, why we think what we do is useful on so many levels. So we have those types of events. Of course, we have music festivals. Of course, we have recording artists that want to use our drone technology in their videos. But more generally, we want to start creating our own standalone shows. And one of the ideas that we're mooting at the moment to take over to Los Angeles is something that we've got a holding title for called Dronosaurus. And we want to create a feature-length drone show that features huge displays of massive dinosaurs marching across the sky. And that output will be augmented, literally with augmented reality apps. So it'll be partially educational. It means that those people in the audience that have a phone or a tablet will be able to hold that tablet up in the direction of the drones in the sky as they fly overhead. And they're going to be able to get additional information overlaid on the drone display. So information about when a T-Rex lived, what it ate, where it roamed, what it hunted, and so on and so forth. All of this will be part of the augmented reality piece that will be superimposed on top of the drone show if people have those devices in hand. And if they're not satisfied with just leaning back and saying ooh and ah as these huge dinosaurs make their way across the sky. A similar initiative is something that we're in the middle of discussing with English Heritage for Stonehenge. We want to marry the ancient celestial technology of Stonehenge with the modern celestial technology that we can deploy. We want to have the solar system represented in drones hovering over Stonehenge itself. And we also want to have an educational resource whereby, visiting audience members will be able to get a little bit more information, not just about the stones, but about the solar system and how it interacts with the stones. And it's an amazing, wonderful, ancient technology that it's exciting to bring together with this groundbreaking technology that we're bringing to market. So we're very excited about that. I'm going to go into another short video now. This is the summary of, or the highlights of the 3 films that we made for Hogmanay. It's strange to see this for us now, because when we did this for our client up in Scotland, which was the Scots Government, Edinburgh Council, and our partners Underbelly, the promoters, we had 150 drones. It was our first show. It was terrifying. the environment into which we put those drones was incredibly challenging, as you'll see. And, but we pulled it out of the hat, and we were very happy and lucky to do so. So I'm just going to show you that one just for a quick second. Bear with me.
This air has heather and malt on its breath, and you can't forget the year's goodbyes, the endless waves of the old year scent. We send out hope into this Scottish air, breathed out by widows, workers, wains, by those who care. You ken this night. Here we cry it Hogmanay, a rhyme for the French of L'homme est né, the man is born. So the new year's born at midnight. There are seeds on the air which will be trees, choreography on the air danced by bees. There's old licht made braw by 1 billion stars, the pure white of Venus and the red of Mars.
So yeah, that was a kind of, as I say, highlights reel from the 3 films. If you are interested and you want to take a look at those films, they're very, very touching pieces. Actually, we were lucky with our artistic collaboration there as well. We got introduced to the Scottish Poet Laureate, a woman called Jackie Kay, who wrote the piece for us, or the words for the piece. We were lucky enough to secure David Tennant, as you heard there, who delivered that beautiful poem with such Scottish aplomb, which was lovely. And then we had a band from the Hebrides called Nightworks, who kindly allowed us to commission a piece of music for them to tie the whole thing together. One interesting, or I hope it's an interesting anecdote, is that we got 8 million views of that around the world within 2 weeks. We had 650 news outlets cover us globally. It was publicized in 50 territories, and we had exposure to 2 billion people. So when we're talking to our clients about what the value is, not only of the drone show, but also of the legacy film that we make, those are the kind of numbers that we can wheel out, and we're happy to do so. One touching story, because we had so many people get in touch with us to say that, they cried and it was touching, and, they couldn't believe they could be affected so deeply by basically a flying robot or a few hundred flying robots. We had a great story from South America, from a high security prison, who reached out to us and said, it was a staff member that said, I've seen your show. We'd really like to show it to some of our inmates, but they obviously can't, use the internet. It's not allowed. So could you send us over a hard copy? So we made a DVD, we sent it over to those guys. And then we had an almost immediate response, talking to us of hardened criminals who, been brought to tears in the dining hall as they screened the 3 films consecutively. And they're not even Scottish. So I don't know what was going on there, but it really did, it touched them in a way that was unexpected and delightful. And that really epitomized what we try and do with this technology. So we were incredibly grateful for that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the process and how we make these things, just to shine a little bit of light on that. I alluded to the fact that it's very similar to a filmmaking process, in as much as we engage initially with the client to kind of scare up some ideas, to kind of come up with some thoughts about what story it is they want to tell. Then we typically move into what we call a discovery phase, and that would be a paid phase where 10% of the notional contract value they deploy, and we go and turn those ideas into provisional storyboards and visualizations of what we think this could look like at location. We submit that for approval, and then we go into the commission phase where they decide, yes, we want to do this, and they pay half of the money up front for us to go and do this. And we build the show for them and test it and film it and send them rushes and see how they feel, make any changes necessary. And then we've got the final delivery phase where we take it to the location, we film it on location, we edit the film, and then we put the film through post-production and deliver the finished product to them. So those are the stages typically in the processes we go through. We have some lovely storyboard artists that work with us to help visualize that stuff and help explain the stories that we're trying to tell. So that really helps us out as well. Finally, or no, penultimately, I just wanted to talk about what we do beyond events. And this is really exciting for us. This division that we're starting called Human Support is something that popped into our heads randomly in a car on the way back from a client meeting. We realized that we can put messages into the sky as well as imagery and animations and so on and so forth. And we started to think, how can we use that messaging for the good? And then we started to think about people in need around the world, whether it be in conflict zones, in natural disasters, or in ongoing emergencies, flood, forest fire, conflict zones, contested borders, and refugees and migrants. And we started to think how interesting and useful it might be, for example, on the Mexican border, for those migrants trying to make their way into the US from Mexico, oftentimes dying from thirst because they don't know where the water is. And even though NGOs are very kind and there are water stations for those people to use as they make those arduous journeys, oftentimes they're traveling at night and they're never going to find them. So we've come up with the idea that we want to put signage up in the air that points to those resources for people, that drives people towards safety and away from danger. We are not yet in a position where we can do rapid deployment into an emergency scenario, but if it is an ongoing situation, like for example, and unfortunately the fires that are ravaging California right now, there are always pockets of civilians that are trapped by those encroaching fires. And we want to be able to have signage in the air that steers them towards the safest way to exit those really dangerous areas. So you can see there's a direct influence here, you know, whether it's like telling people there are mines over here, go that way, or whether it's telling people there's going to be an aid drop over here in 15 minutes with a countdown and bringing people towards that aid drop area. You can see there's a whole lot of potential there. We're really excited about that. And we're going to be de-skilling this whole process and miniaturizing it so that we're going to be able to have a few hundred drones in a few flight cases that will be deployable by less skilled personnel, an NGO or a government organization even. And that then we can fly those drones remotely for them using our command and control over a satellite link to launch those drones into those areas of need. That's really compelling for us. Finally, I just wanted to let you know that because of the interest we're getting from Australia, Adelaide Fringe being the first show that we're going to be putting on, maybe Melbourne New Year's Eve this year, which would overhaul Adelaide as our first show. But a few other, really interesting opportunities have come out of Australia. So we've now opened an Australian office, or we're in the process of that. That should be completed within the next couple of weeks. And then we're moving on to open an office in the first quarter of next year over in California to service the needs of the huge entertainment and outdoor events industries over there. So we're very, very excited about that as well. We're just about to move into Series A funding. So we're going to raise, I think, somewhere between 3 and 5 million. We haven't done that maths yet. And we're hoping to do that in the next 6 months. And that's going to help facilitate our growth into the international market and help augment our capabilities as we move forward.